At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Steve Camp to get us started. Steve, how are you?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
Great. Sound great.
Welcome and thanks to everyone for being with us today. I'm happy to be here with my fellow co-authors of the second edition of Public Assembly Venue Management. And they are Dr. Kim Mahoney, Principal of Venue Logics and faculty member at the University of New Haven. Professor Lee Eskelson, Associate Professor in the Sports, Entertainment, and Event Management program at Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, and Principal of ES Venues. And of course, sporty Adonis Gerals, Assistant Dean of Diversity and Inclusion in the College of Hospitality, Retail, and Sport Management, and Senior Clinical Instructor in the Sports and Entertainment Management Department of the University of South Carolina. And I am Steve Camp, retired after 34 years in venue management. I've also been honored to have been a guest speaker for the past 21 years in the College of Hospitality at Appalachian State University, my alma mater. Now, our goal today is to hopefully offer some insight into teaching venue or facility management. It can be an unusually challenging subject to teach, especially for those who haven't worked in a public assembly venue and may not realize that this industry does not operate by a specific set of rules or procedures. Methods can vary by venue type, venue location, and oversight management styles. It is these variables that make teaching the subject even more challenging. So there isn't a single best way to manage a venue. Each event and each venue type requires management that is flexible, meets its own needs, and can adjust to circumstances and available resources. Likewise, teaching the subject must encourage the student to understand these variables as they undertake the challenge of studying public assembly venue management. Kim?
Okay. Hello, everyone. We'd like to get to know folks that are here joining us today a little bit. So we have a couple poll questions for you. The first is, I know we have some industry folks here with us and faculty members also with us. So this one is really geared toward our faculty members, whether you're a full-time faculty or an adjunct. So for those that are teaching or are scheduled to teach a venue management course, do you have any full-time experience working in a public assembly venue? Is our first question for you. Oh, fantastic. Great. Those are good numbers. As those numbers kind of responses kind of continue to come in, to be honest, that's really great to see. I think 20 years ago, that would have been very, very different. So that's fantastic to see we have people teaching the courses that do have experience working full-time in venues. So our next question relates to the representation of academic programs that we have here. So for those of you that are teaching, whether it is an adjunct or full-time faculty, what program are you teaching venue management in? And this is a check all that apply question for you. We're kind of curious where your course is being offered. Wonderful. Great. That's also fantastic. So I think again, 20 years ago, it would have been much more heavily sport management, and it's wonderful to see that balance. And we hope that what we're going to talk about today will be useful to you in all of those programs. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So through the textbook, what we are working to do is kind of guide the reader through thoughtful consideration of decisions that have to be made in each of the areas that you see here that correspond to our chapters. And then we want to look at the factors that impact those decisions. So we're hoping to help students develop the critical thinking skills and the creativity needed for success in the industry. So beyond just the history and role of public assembly venues and the venue planning, financing, design, and construction, all public assembly venues, regardless of the venue type or the venue size, all must manage the same 9 core functions. So what instructors can do is then frame the discussion, the content, within a context students can understand. So we have these 9 core functions. Identify a context that works for your students, for your academic program. And the overall goal is to really demystify what's going on behind the scenes for these events at these venues. So the hope is that this can really provide for some great class discussions, right? So students are able to share their experiences as it relates to the content. Plus, the good thing is there's really no wrong answers. If you're talking about issues, talking about their experiences at events or at venues, there's no wrong answers because everybody's experience at the venue or at the event is different and unique, which is really in of itself an important part of that discussion. Now you might choose one of these themes you see on the screen to frame your discussion. You might use a particular theme all semester long and kind of build all the content around that theme. Or you may choose to use a different theme for each chapter. It kind of depends on the program where you're teaching and what's going to make the most sense. You might even decide to incorporate some mega events like the World Cup or the Olympics, or sometimes good examples to pull into class. And then you certainly can incorporate current events. So for example, this time of year, I'm sure many of you that are in sport management programs, and I would do the same thing, may relate your content to the NCAA basketball tournament that's going on right now, right? It's a great way for students to connect to the content. You might send them home to watch some games, telling them to look for specific things or specific aspects of the event or the venue, and then to bring back and discuss the next class period. So what we'd like to do today as a suggested strategy for teaching your venue management course is to kind of run through our 9 core functions framed from the perspective of an arena that's hosting a conference basketball tournament. But obviously you can choose, like I said, one of these contexts that we see on the screen or something else that's applicable to your program. So Lee is going to take us through that discussion. So in the slides that follow, for each core function, he's going to provide a little bit of an introduction, and those are the slides you'll see with a white background. Then he's going to examine that core function within the context of the conference basketball tournament. Those are the slides with the blue background. So Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. Administration and finance is the first functional area of the 9 core functions that is responsible for the overall venue operation, which includes meeting the financial and service goals of the venue. In this functional area, management is responsible for setting policies that guide the overall safety, security, and risk management of the venue. Management also sets the standards for providing exceptional guest experience for every guest attending every event. In this case, a basketball conference tournament. The functional area also serves as the external link to the sports and entertainment industry, as well as the community the venue was built to serve. Within the context of a conference basketball tournament, the general manager is really the face of the venue and responsible for the overall game day management. Administration and management serves as the external interface for the venue in the community before, during, and after the event. Next, the business and financial management function. It is important for students to remember that they are not only going to work in the sports, entertainment, and event management business, but they are going into the business of sports, entertainment, and event management. Common business functions found in any organization are also found in public assembly venues. In many public funded venues, they also function adhering to the guidelines of the governmental agency they are owned by, such as state, county, and city. A basketball event has many moving pieces and parts, and most have financial implications for the success of the event in the venue. The 3 most important areas that are monetized and therefore must be monitored and managed during a basketball event are ticketing, which we now refer to in many respects as access management, ancillary services, which is for the most part food and beverage, and operations. Next, booking the venue is one of the most crucial functions of managing a public assembly venue. The number of events that are booked into the venue will determine, in large part, the success of the venue from the mission and the financial perspectives. It may also determine the duration that the venue manager continues in their employment in that position. Next, booking the conference tournaments are not only prestigious for the venue, but generally bring a significant amount of economic impact into the community. This occurs due to the number of people traveling to see the teams that may be from hundreds of miles away. The fans may stay in local hotels and eat in local restaurants. Next, marketing. There are two distinct marketing types required to meet goals and objectives of managing a public assembly venue. The venue itself creates a marketing strategy to reach out to potential promoters and event organizers to book the events. The venue also works closely with every event to develop a marketing strategy to advertise and sell tickets for their events. In turn, the venue will benefit from the people that attend events through revenue generated by ancillary services such as food, beverages, and parking. For a basketball tournament, the marketing department's efforts may include building community support and engagement. For some conference tournaments, there are limited tickets available to the general public. So the venue marketing staff may be more focused on marketing future events to the fans that are attending the tournament. Even if the bulk of the tournament marketing efforts are handled by the event organizer, like the conference event in this example, the venue marketing staff will work to support their efforts through their local media network. Next, ticketing is a form of access management, as I mentioned, using a wide variety of technology. Ticketing is also critical means to control whoever enters the venue. It enables the venue to limit the capacity based on predetermined occupancy codes. Finally, the ticketing system enables the venue to provide an accurate ticket sales report, which is an important part of the financial settlement process. As we transition out of the pandemic, the industry is moving more rapidly towards touchless ticketing systems that I'm sure most of us have already experienced. A maximum capacity for each event based on the event, in this case, a basketball tournament, is determined in the setup. Then a ticketing manifest is created and used to facilitate ticket distribution. Ticketing distribution for a conference basketball tournament is generally handled differently than most other events. For example, a certain percentage of the tickets that may be designated for each conference member school and others may be held for tournament sponsors. Regardless of the approach, it is important that students understand that controlling access to the venue before and during the event is critical. Next, a common misconception is that venue collects and keeps all the ticket revenue. As mentioned previously, generally the event promoter retains the revenue from the ticket, in this case, the conference. A main source of revenue for the venue is from ancillary services, which generally refers to food service and parking. Not only is this a significant revenue stream for the venue, but it also significantly impacts the guest experience. Certain characteristics of a conference basketball tournament impact both food and beverage operations and parking. Depending on the tournament schedule, fans may be in the venue for 4 games in a single day. This may require additional menu offerings such as breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Event staff may be also working 12 or more hours a day, and accommodations must also be made for them as well. Regarding parking, if there is tailgating in the venue-owned parking lots, the additional garbage cans and cleanup may be also required to keep up with the traffic. Next, venue operations management is a function that's critical to the success of events in the venue. This functional area is referred to as the heart of the venue. Many of these operations functions take place prior to the event and are critical to the seamless operation of the success of the event. In addition, providing a clean and sanitary environment will also be a significant objective as venues begin to reopen and guests return to public assembly venues as we transition out of the pandemic. For the event to run smoothly, the operations department should be a well-oiled machine resulting from significant advanced planning. This goal is operational transparency, which refers to the concept that an event runs smoothly and participants and guests do not remember anything other than how enjoyable and successful the event was. They are also not distracted by malfunctioning shot clocks or unclean locker rooms and bathrooms. Unlike a concert or home hockey game, a conference basketball tournament creates additional responsibilities for the operations department, resulting from the number of teams competing, the number of games, and the wider media coverage. Next, event management. Event management in public assembly venues generally refers to the activity that goes on in front of the house, or what we call guest services areas. Venues are working to create an exceptional guest experience in a time-sensitive environment. This responsibility is heightened in a post-pandemic world and society, as venues must make guests comfortable with attending the events in large venues. During the basketball conference tournament, event managers and guest services managers must be focused on taking care of the event staff members who are directly responsible for providing service to the guests in the building. Last, but certainly not least of the 9 functional areas, is the safety and security of all guests, event participants, and employees of a venue is the most significant responsibility of public assembly venue management. Safety and security considerations impact all core functions in public assembly venues. The responsibility extends into the parking lots that service the venue, as well as the immediate perimeter around the venue. Safety and security for a conference basketball tournament may be complicated by characteristics of the event. For example, the presence of high-profile athletes and coaches, high-profile media members, the number of teams in and out of the venue each day, up to 8 pep bands and cheerleading squads in and out of the venue every day, emptying and reopening the venue in multiple times during the day in multiple ticketed events. A high-profile event may attract protests and others wanting to make a political statement. All are a concern of the Safety and Security Department. In conclusion, these are the 9 core functional areas that have to be operated and managed in a way to successfully operate the building. Next, I would like to introduce my colleague and friend, co-author, Sporty Gerald.
Hello, everyone. So excited that you're here today. Point of personal privilege. Lee, great job with the basketball theme. I think we need to recognize that the Lady Gamecocks are in the Final Four this year. I don't see anyone from UConn, Arizona, or Stanford on a Zoom call today, so I will take that as a privilege. We're excited that you joined us today. One of the things that all of us are committed to is success of young people and our students in particular. And one of the things I like to ask our students is, what are your dream job? And we get a lot of different answers, but one of the things we know that no matter what their job, dream job might be in sport, entertainment, hospitality, almost all of those areas, it revolves around events. And so whether they want to be an AD or a general manager or an agent, they need to know something about how the events work, and all those events happen in venues. And so knowing the operational aspects of a venue is important in their career. And so we want to, with this book, we tried to take it from them being a fan and enjoying the event to really looking critically at how the venue operates more from an industry professional perspective. So I think Lee did a great job of Frank Russo, true UConn Husky fan, is on the call. Okay, Frank, we hear you. But Lee did a great job of going through the functional areas, but I think we really were purposeful in trying to create a logical sequence to the topics in our book, from how we look at what we're going to charge promoters to rent the facility from us, to then booking the event with them, to helping them market and sell tickets, to then looking at the event, operational aspects and security. All of those things happen in the book in a real logical sequence. And I think one of the things that we did, Steve, we teach, but Steve, as he has said, is always in high demand to speak to students in our industry. And so we tried to make this something that students at an undergraduate or graduate level can use in their classes. And something that we really think we were very purposeful, again, in trying to make it so that professors could use this, even if you don't have any industry experience. It'll be something that will be very easy for you to understand. So I think finishing up, we want to make this book as easy as possible to adopt. I think that comes with Kim and Lee and I teaching. We know as best we can when we adopt books, it makes it a lot easier when we have those tools that we don't have to create a lot of things for ourselves. And we, here again, I use that term purposeful, intentional, in creating some tools that will make it very easy for you to use the book. I think you're going to find the PowerPoint presentations exceptional. We have a bank of test questions of over 250 test questions related to all of those chapters. We have some topics that you can use in class, some class activities group. I like to use group exercises when I'm teaching my class, case studies that are excellent for homework, functional types of exercises that the students can engage in. And then we have some larger projects that you might want to use as a sort of a semester culminating project. We have 6 of those. So I think you'll find the tools very useful. And then an extensive glossary. Our industry is based on a lot of terminology that young people need to know, even if they're not going to be in our industry. Things like manifest and front of house, those things come in handy for industry professionals. So with that, we do have a video that Kendall Hunt is producing, and I think that will be sent and available to everyone after the presentation today. So Kim, I think it's back to you, or Steve, maybe Steve.
Thanks, Forty. The second edition of the textbook exhibits a concerted effort by the authors to address the latest industry trends and the most up-to-date approaches to public assembly venue management. We have included in the second edition a new chapter that provides students the basics of a venue construction process. It identifies the steps involved from the initial design to the grand opening and offers a variety of options that can affect the construction process. While our focus was always on accommodating the academic needs of the student, the textbook will be widely used as a cross-training tool for industry professionals. The International Association of Venue Managers also uses our textbook as a resource for both their certification and professional development programs. Kim?
Great, thank you guys. I'll tell you one thing that we're asked often is why this textbook and how is this book different from other facility management books that are out on the market. So we've kind of identified what we think are sort of 4 key areas where our book is different. So first is most of the others tend to focus exclusively on sports, oftentimes even including like gyms and recreation centers, where our book is focused on multi-purpose, spectator-driven public assembly of venues of all types. So sporting events, yes, for arenas and stadiums, but also convention centers, performing arts venues, amphitheaters, racetracks, all types of public assembly venues. Other books, content-wise, they often will tend to overemphasize one aspect of the industry, maybe even at the expense or exclusion of others. So sometimes other books will focus very heavily on operations or very heavily on security, and sometimes don't even address the marketing or booking process as those work in public assembly venues. So of course, ours covers those 9 core functions that are common to all venue types. We spoke a lot about sports today. We chose a conference basketball tournament as our focus for our quick conversation. But throughout the book, we worked really diligently to include convention center examples and performing arts venues examples to show how all of these activities and content could be adapted. Because of that, most of the other books are primarily applicable to sport management programs, where ours really can be adapted to different academic programs like entertainment management, event management, hospitality management, and others. And then lastly, that we think differentiates us is us as a resource. You know, we're here and we're available to assist any way we can. If you're a faculty member and teaching a course and maybe there's a particular chapter that you're not as comfortable with, or you would like to discuss some of the case studies or things that we put together, we're happy to chat with you about that. And in today's world of so much being done remotely, you know, if you had a particular topic you would like some assistance with and a guest speaker, if any of the four of us are available, we'd be happy to be a guest speaker in your course. And then I think the additional support and involvement just from the International Association of Venue Managers. They are who we worked with on this project. Fantastic organization, leading, you know, venue management organization, and lots of great additional resources and opportunities there for your students to get involved as well. So we think those are the things that we think differentiate us. These are contact information for each of the four of us, but we'd love to take any questions that you have, whether it's about the book or whether it's about teaching or the industry, anything at all that we can help with.
Thanks so much. I have a few of them here already, and please use the Q&A button or chat function to submit these. Do any of you have suggestions for getting access to venues for students to network, for internships, or backstage for a show?
Okay, well, the backstage for a show, that's probably not quite as likely, but absolutely. I would encourage you to reach out to venues that are in your market and in your community. Our industry, especially I think through this last year and the pandemic, the camaraderie and the support for each other and the willingness to help each other and, you know, helping to educate students, I think you'll find the industry exceptionally welcoming. I know, you know, I've taught in a couple different places, and, you know, sometimes I was fortunate enough to teach somewhere where I could teach the topic one day, and then the second class period that week, we would go to a venue and look at that aspect of running the building. So, you know, I think, you know, even if you might be getting a guest speaker from across the country, you know, could jump in. So I think honestly, just reaching out. I've done that sometimes through LinkedIn. I will say IAVM, if you happen to be a member of IAVM, there are great resources there, and they have mentorship programs, they have internship programs, and there's lots of great opportunities. But I'll definitely let Sporty and Lee jump in as well.
Well, yeah, you know, one thing I love that I do for my students as an extra credit assignment is I have them actually interview an industry professional in a job that they would like to have one day possibly. And I joke with them, I say the three things that people like talking about are themselves, their kids or their pets, or themselves. So if you can interview them and get them talking about themselves, you'll likely have a friend, and that'll open some doors for you for some opportunities to get engaged with the venue, and maybe not get you backstage, but get you in there at least. Lee?
Yeah, I, as Kim mentioned, you know, we have this wide network of colleagues in IAVM, and we talked about the numbers of years we've been teaching and the numbers of years we've been in the industry. Sporty and I and Steve alone, and Kim, we're probably 100+ years in IAVM as well. So, you know, we're very fortunate that our colleagues are very supportive of us as former building managers. And so I have not had the opportunity, or I have not had a situation where somebody said no, they wouldn't virtually come into a class or wouldn't allow us to come to their venue and take a tour. You know, certainly you have to understand that, you know, it's difficult to go to venues on game days or event days. You know, it's really hard to get backstage or back in the locker room areas or those kinds of things. So generally, if you want to go visit somebody's venue, it's good to go on a non-event day. You know, you can't see all of the you know, the wonderful people there to enjoy the event, but you have to kind of take your pick. The best scenario would be to take your students on the day when there is an event and see how the event operates, and then go back on a non-event day when the venue manager and the venue staff will give you more access to different parts of the building. So that's something you want to take into consideration.
I think the combination of a class and venue management combined with an internship program will let the student know whether that's a career path that they want to follow. Some over the years, of course, I've seen a number come and go, and some aren't cut out for it. And I think the internship is something that really shows them what actually happens in a venue, not what they think happens in a venue. And I know, for instance, that Kim had an exceptional internship experience. Where was that, Kim?
I believe that was at the Charlotte Coliseum working for Mr. Sporty Gerald's.
I believe it was.
Yes. And Mr. Camp. Well, but back to your original question, I think those things are so important in getting students in there. You know, there's generally not a super high percentage of students that come in planning to work in venues. I think many of them happen upon it when they're provided those opportunities. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I do think engaging with those local venues, and if you would like to chat with any of us more specifically about your instance, we're happy to do that. We can talk about, what market, what city you're in, and we may be able to connect you with someone that's nearby.
That's invaluable. Thank you for doing that. What are the greatest challenges in writing a textbook for an industry that changes so rapidly?
It is challenging, and I'll tell you, for us, it was a difficult process because we knew the minute we stopped and handed in the manuscript that things were going to continue to change. And of course, we did that in the pandemic is when we submitted the manuscript. So it is very challenging. And that's why, we kind of talked about at the front end that there isn't a single best way to do things. There isn't a single way to do anything in the industry. And part of that is because it changes all the time. The market changes and the context changes and the venue changes, but the industry does as well. And you think about advancing technology and things like that. So the focus really for us was on what are the issues and then what are possible solutions. And as we said, trying to get students to develop those critical thinking skills, and then relying on all of our industry colleagues to help us identify what those trends are and what new things can we expect, that kind of thing. And we're fortunate, for all of us, even though, we're teaching, we're also, all still involved and engaged in the industry. So we're able to be out there and see the new things too, but we rely heavily, quite frankly, on our industry colleagues. And we have some amazing folks that really supported us, and we could pick up the phone and call them if we're in the middle of a session to make sure we've got the most current content from our leading experts in the field.
Do you have time for a couple more questions? I know we're running at the bottom of the hour here, but
Absolutely.
This is more of an industry question, but what future impacts do you feel the potential for protests and infectious disease outbreak have on venue operations and planning?
I'll let I've enough of me talking.
I'm happy to take
want to
that.
take that one? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, we're all working on best practices. IVM has developed a best practices guide. There's, a lot of the companies out there, the management companies have developed their own best practices guide. And, even standalone buildings like the TD Garden in Boston has their own, best practices guide. That's something certainly of a concern. And, we kind of look at it in two areas. We look at it in trying to keep everybody safe and secure in a clean and sanitary environment. And then the venues are also looking at how do they do that and also provide an exceptional guest experience. So, that challenge is, and the minute the pandemic hit and everybody was cleared out of the venues, everybody started to work on, well, how do we get people back in? And I think it's a combination of, following the governmental restrictions, which states and cities and the government and the national government puts in place. And then just trying to figure out how do they do that, in this environment. But I think that's everybody's mindset is how do they accomplish those two things and try to get everybody back into venues, because, that's the core of what we do is to have sold out venues. And And hopefully in the not too distant future, whether it's in 21 or 22, that will happen again. But certainly there'll be new restrictions in place, and there'll be new best practices on the venue side. But I think it's constant. Venue operators, managers, whether they work for a management company or they're standalones, they're constantly looking at ways to keep the buildings clean. And the new one, probably one of the newest challenges that everybody's looking at, because this is an airborne virus, is the air handling systems, and what kind of things can they do with air filtration, air cleaning, all those types of things that everybody is working extremely hard on. And at the end of the day, venues just want to make sure that, again, they have a safe and secure, clean and sanitary environment, and that in doing so, they can still provide that exceptional guest experience.
Excellent, excellent. We're getting a lot of questions on the instructor resources, which is great. People are requesting copies of the publication, so please feel free to use the Q&A or chat function to request a copy. That's outstanding. How do the companion materials relate to the industry?
Why don't, Sporty, you want to take that one?
Yeah,
And while you're responding to that, I'll flip over to the website just to show some of the materials.
That's great.
yeah, I think we were here again, we were intentional in creating the companion materials, particularly like the case studies and the activities. A lot of these were things that have happened to us in our career. And it's great when, I can tell my students, this is I give them the scenario, but they have to figure it out. And then we can kind of go through how, I actually dealt with it. But I think we want our instructors to use your creativity as well. When you maybe just use these as a guide to help you maybe spark some things that have happened to you personally. You might have had an experience in a venue or been frustrated at some point in a ticketing situation or whatever. So hopefully these, the class activities, those kinds of things will help you understand how to use these resources. But they're great. Kim, can you show a couple of the slides? I think those slides are just next level in terms of what I've seen from other adoptions with, with companion materials. And as I said, we have over 250 questions in our test bank. Those projects, all of these things are things that Kim and Lee and I, basically our best projects that we've sort of used over the years. We've adapted them to place them as companion materials. So they're relevant to our business.
Oops. Oh, I'm not teaching at the moment, so it doesn't go to my case studies because I haven't pulled them up. But we hope that, like I said, that this is a good resource for you. And all of these things, and this is getting a little bit into Kendall Hunt's expertise, but all of these items and elements can be customized for you, as far as if you want to include all of the elements we've provided, or you'd only like to include part. And Sporty kind of alluded to it, but Kendall Hunt has created this kind of a how-to video to kind of walk you through a little bit more about the website and how it could be used, which they're making available as well. So any other questions specifically about the companion materials or anything?
No, just a lot of requests for it, which is great.
Great. And I'll tell you, we certainly would be open to any feedback that you have about those, any experiences that you've had with them, or aspects that you found challenging, or things that worked really well. We'd love to hear any feedback that you have. So please don't hesitate to email any of us with that information as you use those materials.
And I'm requested to send a message on to Lee from Will Gillespie.
Hey, Will.
He says hi. Throughout the core functions of venue management, the heart of the industry are the employees. However, the industry has a lot of work to do in regarding employee diversity of gender and race, especially in leadership positions. Is this aspect covered at all in the book, or is this possibly an idea for a future edition?
I think that it's not a specific chapter or topic. I think that we try to work that in throughout the book. But you're right, that is something that may deserve in the future a little more specific focus and attention, but I'll let Lee, Sporty, and Steve chime in as well.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit, and we did talk a little bit about that in our human resources section of the book. But I just took over this position I'm in August, which was kind of coincided sort of when we released the second edition. So it's definitely much more top of mind with me. And as you said, Kim, I don't know if it is warranted to have a whole section on that, but I think we can definitely incorporate that a lot more into possible future editions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great question. Thanks for everybody sticking with us. Still got a lot of people in the session.
Yeah, I know we're past the hour, so I do have one more question if you have time.
Sure.
How did you first get started with teaching at the university level? And what would you recommend to a current industry professional who's interested in pursuing such a path?
Don't do it.
No, that's not true.
Well,
Well,
I think one of the things that I did first is I guest lectured. Well, actually before that, when I opened the Mullen Center at the University of Massachusetts, I taught one course in, surprisingly, venue management. And the students actually came over to the Mullen Center and I taught a course there. And the nice thing about it is the Mullen Center became a laboratory. I mean, the students were ushers and ticket takers and door guards and drove the Zamboni and all kinds of things. So that was my first taste of teaching. And then when I ended up in Providence at the Civic Center at the time, I was actually asked to guest lecture at Johnson & Wales. And so after leaving the Civic Center, I was asked if I wanted to teach, and it was kind of an easy transition because I had already taught a little bit at UMass, and I taught a little, guest lectured a little bit at while I was at the Dunks or at the Civic Center. So it's not something you can just jump into. I mean, going from running a public assembly venue and trying to teach a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds is not an easy thing to do. It's not as easy as some people may think. Which is why we wrote one of the main reasons we wrote the textbook is because, and provided all the companion materials so that it would make that at least the subject part of it a little bit easier. One of the things that I kind of refer to in teaching that I've learned over the 20 years I've been in the classroom is that there's what's called content and process. And we all have, all venue managers have tons of content that they can teach. It's the process of teaching that becomes challenging. It's how do you take all the information and how do you cut it up into pieces and help students understand it, because they have no frame of reference other than the fact they may have gone to some concerts, they may have gone to some games, or they know from what they've experienced from front of the house, but have no clue as to how all these things come together and the tremendous amount of time and effort that goes into putting on a basketball game or a concert, any of those types of things. So my suggestion would be, whatever institution's closest to you, offer to be a guest lecturer, and try it. And, I've been very fortunate. Almost everybody I've asked has come into my class virtually during the pandemic. I've had Chris Bigelow. I've had a number of people from Delaware North. It's just, they will come in and if you haven't been asked, offer, call up your local college or university and say, hey, I see you have a sports management class. I see you have a sports management major, a sports and entertainment major, event major, whatever. And just say, can I come over and guest lecture? Can I help you? Can I teach? And you'll get a feel real quick as to whether that environment's good for you, or you like it, or they like you. And it's a two-way street, because if the students don't like you, you won't be asked back. But it's something that definitely you have to work on. It's not as easy as just stepping into the classroom and saying, here I am, listen to me, because it's a challenge.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll add is there are different paths to do it. I mean, there are certainly a number of industry professionals, some of which I think are probably on this call with us, who work in the industry full time and teach as an adjunct. Maybe they started as a guest speaker and then took over a course as an adjunct, meaning you're just teaching a class or two when you can. So that's one way to go. Now, if you're interested in a career shift to teaching, then you have to kind of re-examine how you'd like to go about that. You don't have to have a terminal degree, but if you're thinking about a tenure track position, then you probably have to have a terminal degree. So for some industry professionals, that can be a little bit of a challenge to do. I did get my terminal degree, didn't ever plan to be quite honest. But I, at the time, was working at the Schottenstein Center at Ohio State. And so working for a university, and the benefit of me being there was tuition. So I did get my terminal degree. That does maybe give me more flexibility in the positions I could apply to in academia. Now, a lot of universities have positions that don't require that terminal degree. You may be like Sporty as a senior clinical instructor. He has a couple, at least 2 master's degrees, but doesn't require a terminal degree. And he's, teaching, like I said, senior clinical instructor. How many years have you been there, Sporty, at South Carolina?
11.
11. And so it depends on the university. Some programs they'll have a limited number of spots they'll fill with people without a terminal degree. Other places, I think, Lee, your department, in your department, how many people have terminal degrees? Do you know off the top of your head?
We have 2.
Okay, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. So it really depends on the university. So Candace, if you'd like to chat with any of us individually, we can kind of talk a little bit more specifically about what you're thinking about and how you might be able to do that. The terminal degree is not necessarily a useful thing for me in the industry, but certainly is in academia for sure, and did allow me to be on a tenure track position and earn tenure, which of course there are some benefits to doing it that way. But other things come with that, like a potential need to do research and to publish, which may or may not be something that you're interested in doing. So if you'd like to, please email any of us and we'd be happy to chat, Candace, with you more specifically. That's a great question.
Lee, Kim, if I could just amplify a little bit about what Lee said, something I call the preacher syndrome. A lot of people think that the preacher just wakes up on Sunday morning, has a cup of coffee, goes over and does his sermon at 11 and is home at 12:30 to watch the football games. But it's a lot of work being a college professor. And as Lee said, it's frustrating. I got an email from a student. I have an exam that's open Friday morning, and it's open from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. Saturday morning. So the kids have 24 hours to take this exam. And I got an email from a student. Well, Professor, I'm traveling to the West Coast. So I'm wondering, am I going to be at a disadvantage, taking the exam? And I'm like, you got to just figure out you're 3 hours behind us. That's what I want to say. So you have to kind of hold their hands sometime. It's frustrating. It'd be great if it weren't for the students. We know that. But I would encourage people, adjunct is the way I started. That's a fancy name in academics for part-time. But I would caution you as an adjunct, adjuncts typically don't get paid a lot. And I've had a couple of friends who've been adjuncts and they say, this is crazy. I'm making $4,000 for a semester and I'm getting emails, constantly. And, I'm having to do grading. I didn't realize it was going to be this much. So I would say just kind of ease into it. But as Lee said, you'll know pretty quickly whether this is something that you're passionate about. I think all of us on this call, really our love for young people sort of overrides all the things that make it not fun sometimes.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, Steve, Sporty, Lee. This has been a lot of fun. As a final note, I invite you to join us for the Equity and Inclusion Leadership Series on April 9th, presented by Dr. Aaron Thompson and Houston Barber. This series is dedicated to creating a personalized equity approach for educators and leaders in both the public and private sectors. To learn more, visit ag.kendallhunt.com. Once again, thank you for joining us on this webinar today. In the coming days, you'll receive a copy of this recording. and contact information for our 4 panelists. In addition, if you've requested access to the publication, our colleague Ian Lamoureux will be in touch with you with access to the book and instructor resources. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great week.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.